Welcome to today's episode of What to Say and How to Say It. I'm Nina Rosner, and I'm with our favorite licensed professional counselor, Kyle Hargrove. Today, we're going to be talking about how time travel is ruining your marriage. And you're like, oh, we haven't discovered time travel. Well, you know what? We're all engaging in it on a daily basis, and it is blowing up our conflicts. There is a healthy way to do conflict, and we are going to talk about some of those things today. Before we get started, I want to remind you, if you want to dig into how to change your marriage and learn the ways of moving forward differently, go over to greaterimpactwives.org and sign up for our free space, take our marriage assessment, and maybe hop into our e-course, and we'll see you over in that space. Have a great experience with that. Glad you're here. So, Kyle, I'm guessing that you're familiar, as I am, maybe more so because you watch it daily. Time travel like happens right in front of your eyes as you're working with clients.
It's amazing. It is because uh, you know, I can learn more about a client's perception of their spouse in 90 seconds of time travel than I can in 3 hours of therapy.
Mhm.
Because man, once somebody gets going on bringing up the past and living in the past of someone's sins against them, it is hard to stop them, and they can rattle off a dozen of them in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Yeah. That's frustrating. It's damaging to the relationship. And then I think it's kind of an all stop in the middle of, what we're working forward on right then. We just threw a jackknife into the whole thing because it's not useful to the process. Well, you have some things we want to break apart today in terms of how do you do conflict and what's time travel got to do with it?
Sure, sure. Well, how do you do conflict? I want you
Oh,
to, all right, close your eyes for a minute. Just
uh-huh.
close your eyes. Close your eyes.
Yeah.
All right. I want you to go way back to a very, very young, newly married Nina. And I
Ooh.
want you to recall a conflict that went there. Okay. Oh, you went there. Okay. Yes, you did. Yes, we did. What are some of the things that happen when we let emotion get the best of us? And when we let our emotions dictate our behaviors in a
Mhm.
conflict with our spouse, what do
Yeah.
you remember?
Yeah.
Or
Thanks for
was it
that.
last week? I don't know. I mean,
No, no, this was thankfully 3+ decades ago. And thanks for that horror trip. That was fun. No,
oh,
I,
my
I
pleasure.
initially went to being 10 years old when I first lost my temper, and it was a horrifying experience. And then I kept listening to you, and you're like, oh, no, we're not back that far. We're your first years of marriage. Well, I repeated that same experience. I acted like an angry 10-year-old emotionally vomiting all over my husband. It was
Yeah.
horrible. Just like regrettable incident, ugly style. Just, ooh. Yeah, I did it twice and I realized I don't know anything about how to be married and how to work through problems. And I'm thankful that, I didn't sit him down and clean his clock more than 2 times early like that. But I literally didn't know what to do. So I acted like a 10-year-old.
Yeah. And I think that, one of the things that surprises some of us, and I'd be one of those people because I'm one of these people that will avoid not a conflict, but I'll avoid an animated conversation
Mm,
until I feel like I know where I stand, at least,
mm,
and what I want to say. And I kind of have carried that with me since young adulthood for some reason. There's a lot of other things I didn't carry with me that I should have.
mm.
But someone like me who wants to initiate a conversation that's that's not upset, that's not all over the map emotional. Sometimes we hold a lot of things in for a long time. So when we finally do
Mhm.
have that moment where we just don't care about being appropriate anymore, we don't care about being respectful anymore, this is going to come out. It's going to come out loud, and it's going to come out ugly.
Yeah, that's fair.
There are some people who do that on a regular basis, and some people who do that at a lower level on a regular basis, and some people who never say anything at all.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of go-tos when it comes to that kind of conflict. And, that's why I was kind of asking you about remembering one and talking about some of the things that typically happen. And let's do a differentiation before we move any further today. Let's differentiate the two parts of who we are. And even though they are inextricably intertwined, married together, there are times when we need to be able to pull them apart and separate them.
Mm-hmm.
And God created us as both logical and emotional creatures. We are able to think logically and we are able to feel emotionally, thoughts and feelings. Okay. And we're both. And sometimes that, the way they get intertwined makes it confusing in terms of how we want to communicate them.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think people who communicate like adults and like responsible, mature, well operating adults, they want to learn the skill, and it's a skill. It takes practice. It takes sitting down and saying, I'm going to separate my feelings and emotions from this scenario so that it can be resolved in a logical way. Because let's face it, emotion doesn't solve problems.
Yep.
Logic does.
Exactly.
And so it is imperative that as couples that we learn to allow our emotions to settle. We learn that we're both committed to the process, so we're going to get it resolved. And there are a lot of things that have to happen sometimes for that, but we're not going to allow emotion to drive the bus.
Yep. That's our basic first boundary we teach everybody is have zero conversation when emotional. Like just
Yeah.
none. Go talk to God. Like he can handle that, but do not inflict yourself on another human. By the way, don't allow them to do that to you either. Most of the phone calls I take, over 70-80% of them every week, are with people that are being screamed at for extended periods of time, like more than a sentence or two, and then they're hanging out for that, or they're retaliating with more of the same. And it's like,
Right.
stop returning evil for evil and stop allowing the Holy Spirit's temple to be trod upon in that way. Like, don't hang out for sin and evil. Now, you don't have to leave that in an ugly way either. You don't retaliate. You say something like, hey, I love you. Let's do this when we can both be calm. And you leave the room like you're done. It's over. Don't give evil an audience. But most of us aren't in that space yet. And my guess is for a lot of people listening to this today, it's like there's some pretty common behaviors that come out right out of the gate for most people. And I know for me as a 10-year-old and as that 20 something that was newly married that was just mad as all get out and hurt, it was you're this, you're that, you never, you always, like the you language was flying out because I wasn't going to take responsibility for anything.
Yep.
So
I think uh, that's a favorite. The you language, the accusations, um, absolutes.
yeah, always and
Always,
ever.
you always, you never,
Yeah,
things like that, which isn't true
no.
99% of the time. We don't want to exaggerate. Uh, I've told over 12 million clients to stop exaggerating, a
Sure,
conflict.
Kyle.
So we, we have that.
Yeah.
There's passive aggressive behavior, which is lying,
Mhm.
basically, in order to avoid the conflict. It's saying what will stop the issue instead of what you really feel, but then it always comes back later because how you really felt is going to be,
Yeah.
is going to be the truth once it's all said and done. And then something I like to call sparkasm, which is the use of sarcasm in conflict situations when we're sparring, and that usually will either, well, it'll do one of two things. It'll end the conversation or it will escalate it.
Yeah.
Okay, but it will not stay. It will not stay at a manageable level when
Mhm.
sparkasm. and it becomes a thing. And it is a thing. It's maybe not a real word, but it's my word. It's real in my world. Um, and then we use it because it helps people remember something a little different sometimes does. So all those are kind of the go-tos, and there are modus operandi. It's how we go about doing things. And when we get into fights and typically it is emotion that leads us there.
Yeah.
So it is emotion that is going to drive the bus.
Yeah. That's never a good idea. Like emotions are always a drunk driver.
Yep.
Not good.
But the one I think that probably is used as the biggest weapon when our emotions are taken over is dragging up garbage from the past.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Now I'm not talking about last week necessarily because that's still pretty fresh. But I am talking about things that we've already dealt with, situations that have already occurred. We think or hope we've worked it out. Uh, Hopefully, we have the confidence that we have. But even if we have worked it out, it seems to be a common habit for us to go back and grab those things anyway and beat our spouse over the head with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's neither fair nor is it okay. Because we've all got things in our past we'd rather not be brought up and used against us now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is not court after all.
Well, and it seems like once you get on a roll with that, for some reason, suddenly you can remember the 28 other things. And then there's these other things that are kind of sort of like that they also did. And the
Mm-hmm.
next thing you do, you know, you've got the entire kitchen sink like spewed out all over the place, and there's no hope of solving a problem at this point. You've hurt
Yeah.
everybody too much.
And it's one thing to awfulize something that you're overthinking, but it's a completely different thing to awfulize your spouse.
Hmm.
What is the purpose of this? To resolve a problem or to make your spouse look and feel as bad as you possibly can?
Well, for some people, that is the case. They
Yes.
they can't handle feeling bad or the regret that they have, and so they just want to make their spouse understand that everything is their fault. You know, it's a thing.
What do we do? I would like to take a trip into just a little piece of the Canadian sociologist Eric Burns' transactional analysis. And when Dr. Burns talks about transactional analysis, that he breaks us into three ego states when we communicate with others. We're either operating out of a parent ego state, an adult ego state, or a child ego state. Ideally, optimally, we want to be conversing adult to adult and then
Mhm.
responding adult to adult.
Yeah.
When we do this, things get done.
Yep.
Okay. Anytime those transactions cross or move into any other ego state, there are typically going to be some literally efforts to block the progress of solving the problem.
Yep. That is so true. Yep.
And who wants to say, yeah, we had a problem and we started to talk about it, but I didn't really want it to get solved. So I thought I would act like a child,
Yeah, nobody does
or I would
this on
act like I
purpose.
remember feeling as a child,
Yep.
you know, or I didn't really appreciate the way my spouse was handling this or the things that were being said about me. So I got real tough, and started treating him like I'm his parent or her parent.
Hmm.
None of those are going to get the problem solved.
No.
So Byrne said when we're operating and we're working out of the adult ego state, there are a few things that we must do in order for our communications to be effective and for resolution to occur in the midst of a conflict. And there are three things. We don't talk about anything that is not here and now, this issue,
Hmm.
right now, and whatever is around it. We don't process or try to process with our emotions, but we process the problem with logic.
Yeah.
Okay. I like to call it logitizing. Okay. We prioritize logic here. So we logitize.
Okay.
All right. So here and now, logic, and that all communication in this discussion is based on facts only. The facts, ma'am, just the facts.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. We
Yep.
don't We don't add assumptions. We don't add, well, someone said. We don't add opinions. We don't add, well, it's just like such and such. No. If we don't know for a fact that it is a fact, and usually that means I seen it with my own two eyes, then we don't know it to be factual. We don't use it then.
Hmm.
Now, for some people, that takes their ammunition dump from here to there.
Yeah,
They think, well, I don't have much to go on. Well, maybe it's because you don't have much to go on.
exactly. Yeah, and you can tell when something like that is a problem because people are using words like, well, he thinks or you think, like they're doing mind reading in the middle of that. It's like, how do you know that?
Yep.
Yeah, how do you know like what they say? Well, I haven't talked to him yet. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what's happening?
But all of this is how we avoid the time travel. All right, let's get real in now. All right, let's get into this space where this conflict has occurred, and let's keep everything from the past out of it. When there is a problem, I don't care if it's in a lab, I don't care if it's at a grocery store, at a daycare, or in your home. The problem gets solved using logic, thinking through potential solutions, cause and effect, and different dynamics such as these.
Mhm. Yeah, I think women struggle with this because for us, so many things are connected in our heads, and we can remember the 28 times this has happened before. And it is really hard to do, but I agree 100% with you with this. You cannot solve problems if you're going to leave the problem that you're dealing with right now, because all those other ones, sorry, missed opportunity. Now you know what to do. Let's do it here. But
Yeah.
let all those go. That's done. You missed it. The bus is left. You can't coulda, shoulda, woulda with that. Right. And so that doesn't count. So what? You let yourself get walked on 28 other times, or you took that behavior instead of speaking up. Well, speak up now, but you don't get to use the ammunition of all those other times you were silent. That doesn't sound very fair, but it is what works. And it's an adult way of dealing with things because reality right now is all we have. And if you want to make everything worse, go back there. That'll mess it up. Or worse, go in the future with, well, you're just gonna. It's like, okay, there's no hope here at all then. Thanks for blowing up any chance we had of doing anything any better.
Yeah.
Just ruin
And
it.
we may have spoken about this on another cast, but I think it's worth repeating if we have. And that is that this requires a great deal of energy,
Mm,
okay, to communicate in a courageous conversation that we don't know where it's going to go. We don't always know how it got here, but here we are.
hmm.
And the important thing is that we're both committed to resolving the issue rather than beating each other down.
Yeah.
But here's something that we can notice and maybe a tip to pay attention to. We have anxiety and worry, and we have anger. And people who are worried and anxious, they're projecting their lives into the future.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever spent time being worried or anxious or not. I have, and I think most of us have.
Yeah. Sure.
It's exhausting.
It is.
Being worried is terribly energy stealing.
Yep.
So, worried, afraid, fearful, anxious, projecting their life into the future. Angry, bitter, projecting their lives into the past.
Yep.
And
Fair.
still feeling and still lingering in the pain and the
Hmm.
difficulty of things from the past.
Yeah. Let's ruminate.
Also, also horribly exhausting.
Yes.
Being angry makes you tired.
Hmm.
Okay. So if you've literally wasted all your energy either projecting into the future or into the past, you got very little in the here and now.
Right.
You don't have much left. And it's literally impossible to be able to think and be logical and rational in these situations. And the only thing left to take over is our emotions.
Yep.
So this is self-discipline when I realize that I'm worrying about something that hasn't happened yet and probably won't.
Hmm.
or when I'm still angry about a hurt or a wrong that someone's done, and I haven't yet let go of that because I don't understand what forgiveness really is,
Yeah.
it's going to be difficult for me to put my emotions aside. Not going to have the energy to do that. And when that happens, we continually find ourselves in these unending cyclical situations where no matter what the problem is, we keep beating our heads against the wall by trying to tackle it in the same way. And it never works.
No, it doesn't.
Things never get resolved. There's always going to be somebody who says, I'm never heard. Things don't ever work out our way, my way. We have these conversations or these arguments or these fights, and you always get your way, and I always have to just suffer the consequences of that. Funny thing is, the other person is probably thinking the same thing.
Exactly. And when you bring that kind of energy to a conversation, you then create that as the outcome. Um, yeah, I have three adult children, one of which is married, and a husband, and some people I'm really close to that I work with in ministry. And um, it just you have to stay in the here and now and be present there because there's so much opportunity for evil and for damage to occur without even talking to anybody. But one of Gottman's statistics that I really appreciate, and it's either 81 or 87% of people that are happily married think the best. They give their partner the benefit of the doubt, and they rationalize positive explanation for, oh, he forgot to pick up milk, or oh, they left the lights on outside, or whatever. Like oh, well, they must be tired. They make up positive explanation for that versus going, well, he doesn't care about me, and and they've never loved me, and all the psychotic things that we do, the dangerous mental things that we do that cause us even more problems then because that then comes out sideways at our spouse. It has absolutely nothing to do with what is actually real, which is the lights are still on in the garage. Um, you can make that about you if you want to, or you can turn the lights off and give your partner some grace and go to bed. Yeah, like we get to choose so much of our mental and emotional relational health, and we don't even know it.
We do. And the things that we end up arguing and sparring about are typically not the problem at all.
Hmm.
But a lot of us have not yet developed the skills to A, understand how to get to that conversation, and then B, in that conversation, be emotionally self-aware enough to know what it is that we're really feeling and why,
Hmm.
rather than, you left the light on again. And what do you want to make my life miserable?
I know, right? Yes,
Is that your purpose here on this
that was
earth?
my best attempt today, man, to make you crazy. I spent all day coming up with that one.
That's right. And I made the dogs poop twice tonight, you know, so that you'd have more to clean up tomorrow if
There
it's
you
your
go.
morning, whatever. I mean, come
You
on,
planned it.
stop.
You even got the dogs in on it.
I know.
Yeah, yeah.
But
It's
the
funny.
thing,
Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you.
Well, I'm thinking about my horse trainer. This guy, he's so respected. And one of the things that I'm 100% sure of is that if he ever has an issue with me, he'll tell me. Um, and I respect him so much. And I've done some things like there's barn etiquette, right? I board my horse there and I take lessons there. And it's not like they hand you a sheet of rules. Like, there's just not a list of things and there's tiny little things. And I had a salt lick for my horse and I stuck it on a fence a post the other day. And he said, that salt's going to rot or rust that metal on that post. And that's not my preference. So I took it down, right? And I said, oh, gosh, I'm sorry. It didn't even occur to me to ask. And he says, yeah, if you want to do that, go do this instead. So he gave me an option. But the thing is, and I was thinking about this earlier today, one of the reasons I respect him so much is because he calls me up, not just in lessons and writing, but in the little rule stuff. I don't walk on eggshells around this guy at all.
Yeah.
Um, but a key element of respect is having what we're sitting here calling courageous conversations because for most people, it's courageous to say, hey, XYZ, you know, but for people that are actually courageous and brave, it's not a big thing. It's just I respect myself and I want to respect you. So I'm going to ask you to behave in alignment with, where the guardrails are. And that's it. And there's nothing more to it than that. There's just
Right.
absolutely nothing more to it than that. And I don't I want to be like that 100% of the time in my relationships. I want someone to say about me, I know exactly where I stand with her. I'm not worried about it. If she has a problem with me, she'll let me know, you
Yeah.
know? And so I've challenged myself this year not to become some nitpicky Karen. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not taking offense over everything. But when something occurs, I bring it up and I say, "Hey, I'm sure this wasn't your intention." So I let them know I'm thinking good of them in the first place. This thing that happened kind of affected me, and so I wanted to talk about it. Is this a good time? And boy, it's been interesting to watch how that is impacting the relationships I've got.
Yeah, I bet.
Um, I feel like I'm getting more respect from people, and I already was respected, but I'm being consistent. And I think that's a key with it. And part of that is we become disrespectful to ourselves and to our partners and the person we're talking to when we don't stay in the here and now. When we time travel out of that, when we go backwards or forwards, it's disrespectful behavior because that's not what's real right now. That time is past. This is what's here. And to your point, I think it's just really healthy to stay focused on what's happening right now.
Yeah. Well,
And
and,
it's
and
good.
and how many people can go back and point to, well, I'm hoping a lot. People can go back and point to places in their relationship that are memorable for positive reasons. And sometimes that's because they put their heads together and they work
Hmm.
something.
Hmm.
They put the emotion aside. That emotion is unconscious contamination. And
Yeah.
even though that
Ugh.
emotion and logic are married together, this is where we have to pull it aside, set
Yep.
the emotion aside. And we're not going to pretend it's not there. We're just not going to let it be a part of this process.
Well,
If we don't do that, we end up suffering from, retrospect.
what
You know,
did you, well, who did what?
retrospect. In retrospect, I regret the way that I handled
Okay.
myself in this situation. That's regret.
Okay, you're thinking faster than my brain's moving today. That's a cool
Yeah.
one.
I want to look at it and say, I'm pleased with how I handled myself. I'm pleased that I respected my spouse. I honored her or him in
Mhm.
this situation, even though we were seeing things differently. I honored them with that respect. And as a result, we were able to come together and make compromises and understand better one how the other felt and how they see things and come out on the other side holding hands. And that's how marriages grow. That's how
Yeah.
relationships grow. Avoiding these things is robbing yourself of the opportunity for that relational maturity.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
most of us would rather avoid a fight. We'd rather get a tooth pulled or have a root canal
Hmm.
than have that big one
Yep.
with our spouse.
Yeah. Well, and don't you think some of this stems from how we define or the value or the role, I guess is the word I'm looking for, that we place on emotion? Because if I'm looking at that as my truth, oh, my feelings are hurt, therefore you did something to me. Instead of, and this is how I look at emotions, which is maybe too German, I don't know, but I look at emotions as these are a cue for something going on in me that may or may not involve what you just did. So I look at that as an opportunity for me to explore within myself what's causing me to feel this way. Because what's really true is that 100% of the time you can find somebody that's not going to be hurt by what your spouse just said to them. They'd blow it off. They'd be like, they don't mean that. Or they wouldn't take it personally. It wouldn't be a stabbing injury emotionally to them. So if it is, like we need to look at that and there's something there about us.
Yeah. I like to, in my cartoon mind, which is 12 or 13, I think.
Uh,
Uh, I look at it as emotions are tiny little newspapers that get thrown into my ear, and I pull it out and I open up and read it and go, oh, emotions bring us information. Okay. Emotions contain information. And I need to pay attention to what that information is because
Yeah.
it tells me something. It's similar to what you just said, just another very
Well,
juvenile way of thinking about it.
it's interesting how you describe that. I mean, that was just so very calm and pardon me, but male is the newspaper that comes flying into your ear. And you said cartoon mind, and I've got Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, and then the big atomic Acme explosions going. That's emotion. Like if you're a chick, that's boom, that's emotion. And Kyle's like, no, it's a little newspaper, and you fold it open and you read it. It's like, oh my
This
gosh.
is what I need to understand from this emotion.
Yeah.
There's a reason this emotion is there. God gave it to me.
I wish I had a male
There's
brain
information
sometimes.
attached with it.
I envy the male brain because there's been a lot of corralling of horses and training in the wildness of the feminine brain that we all the lady listeners and I have. It's work.
I didn't become this juvenile overnight.
Okay.
I passed that age up, and then I have reverted back to it as I grow older, and I'm okay with that
All
because
right.
I think a lot of the stuff that I thought of when I was that age, I'm past that, but a lot of it simplifies things for me. So
Yeah,
it's
I follow you on Facebook. I might challenge that one. Anyway, some of the things you post, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's got some great dad jokes, but whoa. So, okay, let's just keep going here. You got a couple more things you want to say about this. I know that today.
well, all I want to say is that what we're talking about here, this time traveling thing, the the ability to separate the emotion from the logic and utilize the logic. I went outside the other day and I saw one of my gas cans, my plastic gas can sitting out there in the sun, and it was bloated.
Oh,
And I thought, oh, that's not good. So, I took it and put it, in the shade behind the shop, and I let the air out of it, and it relaxed and went back to its normal shape. I mean, it was like a beach ball, a red beach ball.
oh
But I
boy.
think when we set our emotions aside, we take care of things with logic. When we come back to them,
Hmm.
they're not nearly what they felt like when we started. They're still there, they still matter. But all the bloatedness of those emotions and the immediacy and the need, to be that way, whatever it is, it seems to have gone because we've cooperated and we worked together. So understand that the MO of the human being is to operate emotionally instinctively.
Yeah,
Okay. Because sometimes emotions tell us that we need to protect ourselves.
fair.
And that's not always a pretty thing.
Mhm.
And it's not always a fun thing. And it is not always something that feels fair to everybody involved. So to actually separate those things and continue in that mode and behave in that way, it's supernatural, man. I mean, the
Yeah,
natural thing for us to do is to hash it out emotionally, but it's not the effective thing.
right.
So we've got to step out of what's natural and into what's supernatural and say, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to learn to do this. And then I'm going to come back to the emotional part and see what's left, because some of it, sometimes it's gone.
Yeah, I like that.
That negative emotion has been clarified. Things have been
Hmm.
clarified that cause that emotion to disappear.
Yeah, I love
you know
that.
but we need to love each other and care about one another and respect each other enough to say, now that we've got the problem solved, can we talk about how we felt and see if anything needs to yeah.
Hmm. Well, and
Sometimes there are apologies and things like that need to happen.
a lot of women may need to go do that first. Because honestly, it's like a tornado in our head.
Mhm.
It's really hard to logically solve a problem when you've got this hurt monster that's everywhere. Like we don't have a nothing box like you guys do. And we don't have boxes. Like when you ask a man, what are you doing? Or what are you thinking about? And he says nothing. Women don't have that option. That is not real for us. We don't even know what that's like. And I'm glad you're smiling and nodding and think that's great. I, like I said earlier, I envy sometimes and admire the male brain because we have everything's all just connected and it's a mess up there. And there's greatness in that too. I'm not discounting that awesome that we have the brains that we do. But when it comes to stuff like this, like we need to sort ourselves first and then come into the thing. And regardless, like sometimes to your point, there's times when we just need to man up, grow up, adult up, whatever it is, however you're going to say that, and solve the problem because, something is going to happen in the next half hour if we don't. Like those
Mhm.
things are real and we need to be able to do that sometimes, but it is hard, really hard. So I'm going to ask for grace from all of the men in the universe for the women that say, "Hey, I'm going to go work out my emotions and I'll be back in about a half hour and then we'll talk about this." How's that sound?
I'm already
As long
fishing.
as they, yeah, as long as they go do it, right? Because then they'll be better when they show up and talk to you. So there's that.
Right too.
Yeah.
Love it. All this
But
is so simple, right?
I know, right? Like, let's just navigate the differences. So win-win. Let's just work out win-win. And they'll
Well,
be,
the thing here, my parting shot. We we don't do this well because we fear the process and we fear the unknown. How is
mm,
this going to work? Where are we going to come to? Is that more scary than having a blowout? Because to me, and I know I may be a little different. To me, the scary thing is having a knockdown, drag out, bring every weapon you have to the fight with your
mhm.
spouse.
Yeah.
That's what scares me, much more so than a conversation that may or may not go the way I want it to.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah. False evidence appearing real. Fear. Yeah. It's all just
Absolutely.
up in our heads. So thanks for that, Kyle. How do we get a hold of you if we live in Texas and we want a therapist?
Oh, just yell real loud, you know,
Yeah.
uh,
And then,
cross the prairie.
yep.
No, feel free to catch me via email. It's Kyle Hargrove LPC at gmail.com. Or if you're in Texas and you're looking for a therapist and would like to consult, then you can find me at helloalma.com or headway.co.co.
All right.
Either of those places will find me whether I want to be there or not.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Kyle. And it's been a great episode to talk through some of these things, especially about time travel. Good stuff for folks to remember. Stay present, talk in the facts, be rational, be logical. That matters. And if you want another episode on dealing with conflict, be sure to check out the next one and look at that button down below and hit subscribe so that you're caught up and up to date with all the stuff that we're talking about. Glad to be here. Hope these things help with your marriage and bless God and bless you. We'll talk soon.